What is freedom? A dictionary will tell you that freedom is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants to, or that it is the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved, or the state of not being subject to or affected by something undesirable. It will tell you that freedom is without constraint. Across the world today, freedom is viewed as the greatest thing that one can have. But the thing about freedom is that no dictionary definition or singular understanding would ever be able to fully satisfy its meaning. It has no fixed meaning. Freedom is a construct created to oppose the cruelty of this world, the cruelty that man is so often capable of manifesting. Freedom is part of a nexus, a causal link. Without fear, without oppression, without other external obstacles, freedom wouldn't have to exist. It wouldn't be so desperately sought after and heralded as the greatest thing that one can have. It is contingent upon opposing forces, and that's why what one person considers to be freedom could very well be different from what another person considers to be freedom. So, what does Eren Yeager consider freedom to be? It is just his fantastic dreams, his vulgar folly that he will desire to retain simply in order to prove to himself, as though that was so necessary, that men still are men and not the keys of a piano, which the laws of nature threaten to control so completely that soon one will be able to desire nothing but by the calendar. And that is not all. Even if man really were nothing but a piano key, even if this were proved to him by natural science and mathematics, even then he would not become reasonable, but would purposely do something perverse out of simple ingratitude, simply to gain his point. And if he does not find means, he will contrive destruction and chaos, will contrive sufferings of all sorts, only to gain his point. He will launch a curse upon the world, and as only man can curse, it is his privilege, the primary distinction between him and other animals. Maybe by his curse alone he will attain his object, that is, convince himself that he is a man and not a piano key. If you say that all this too can be calculated and tabulated, chaos and darkness and curses, so that the mere possibility of calculating it all beforehand would stop it all, and reason would reassert itself, then man would purposely go mad in order to be rid of reason and gain his point. I believe in it. I answer for it. For the whole work of a man really seems to consist in nothing but proving to himself every minute that he is a man and not a piano key. It may be at the cost of his skin, it may be by cannibalism, and this being so, can one help being tempted to rejoice that it has not yet come off, and that desire still depends on something we don't know? What I just read is a passage taken from Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, a novella first published in 1864. It's the story of a man who is so conscious, too conscious even. He is so aware of his own thoughts and feelings that they cause him to be indecisive and overly self-critical. And here he expresses the belief that man can be defined by the pursuit of self-affirmation, to prove to oneself that you matter, that your voice holds meaning, that you can do as you wish, and that you are human. That you are not a cog in a machine contingent upon logic and rationale, but a man with free will, with choice, and with the freedom to commit irrational acts if you so wish. Dostoevsky argues that man is not defined by their intellectual achievements alone, that the scientific, rational approach at living is not really living, and denies an essential part of human nature. Man is not made up of just reason, but also impulse. Impulse meaning desires, emotions, and unpredictable moods. The freedom of choice, the freedom to commit irrational acts, these are the very qualities which define man's personality and individuality. And to take this even further, man often deliberately performs these irrational acts that result in destruction and chaos simply to prove that he is free. Eren Yeager is defined by his pursuit of freedom. But he's not so much pursuing freedom as a concept, but rather the ability to prove that he is free, to others and most importantly to himself. As stated previously, freedom means different things for different people, and in the case of Eren Yeager, freedom takes on a very simple and honestly quite childish meaning. Let's go through this right from the very beginning.
どうしたよ、アルミ。
これおじいちゃんが隠し持ってたんだ。外の世界のことが書かれてる本だよ。
外の世界の本だって？それっていけないものなんだろ？ケンペ団に捕まっちまうぞ。
そんなこと言ってる場合じゃないんだ。この本によると、この世界の大半は海っていう水で覆われているんだって。しかも海は全部塩水なんだって。
塩だって？嘘つけ。塩なんて宝の山じゃねえか。きっと商人がすぐに取り尽くしちまうよ。
取り尽くせないほど海は広いんだ。
なわけある。
塩が山ほどあるだけじゃない。炎の水、氷の大地、砂の雪原。きっと外の世界はこの壁の中の何倍も広いんだ。
外の世界か。
ねえエレン、僕たちもいつか外の世界を探検できるといいね。
This conversation between Eren and Armin as children serves as the linchpin for Eren's motivations. It honestly might just be the most important moment in the entire story of Attack on Titan when it comes to understanding the character of Eren Yeager. He forms his idea of freedom around this book that describes all the sights the outside world has to offer. At that point in time, Eren was completely aimless, just another regular kid within the walls living a life of ignorance and without purpose. But everything changed for him right there. He quickly filled with rage at the standard of living that he and everybody around him were completely trapped in, confined in these giant walls out of fear of the Titans, chained by their own weaknesses. This is what makes Eren so intense and so fiery at the start of the story. The very first page of the very first chapter of Attack on Titan perfectly captures the essence of Eren's character. In just 3 lines, Isayama establishes the framework of Attack on Titan, a framework that will in time grow into a rich tapestry of various themes that all flow into this central idea. On the day that Shiganshina fell, the human race remembered the terror of being dominated by them, and the shame of being held captive in a birdcage. The fact Isayama refers to the dominators as them, rather than being clear-cut and just saying Titans, is noteworthy and remarkably fitting, as Eren comes to understand when they finally arrive at the beach in chapter 90 that the enemy is far more than just Titans. Everything out there in the world that opposes Eren's perceived right to freedom is an enemy. There is also some subtle symbolism in the choice of wording. Referring to the Great Walls of Paradis as a birdcage is quite fitting. Birds are symbols of freedom across literature, and the circular structure of the walls complements that wonderfully. To take this even further, the Survey Corps' emblem are the Wings of Freedom. This division of the military ventures outside of the walls to gain intelligence and fight against the oppressive Titans. There's no wonder that Eren was so desperate to join them. Even before the fall of Shiganshina, the Survey Corps are the closest thing to freedom seekers on Paradis. Sometime after the conversation between Eren and Armin, Grisha takes Eren to meet Mikasa, where they find the corpses of her murdered parents. The look on Eren's face here is honestly terrifying. Is that the kind of look you'd expect from a 9-year-old looking at 2 dead bodies? He doesn't look shocked or scared, he looks absolutely furious. Grisha tells Eren to stay at the base of the mountain, which he doesn't do, and instead goes searching for Mikasa by himself. He finds her kidnappers and parents' killers, and here we get our first real glimpse of Eren's true nature. The Akuma no Ko, the child of evil. We see just how unhinged and irrational Eren can be. He's more engaged in carrying out his own sense of justice and killing these kidnappers than actually saving Mikasa. And the main reason for this is the philosophy he adopted in that conversation with Armin. The sights of the outside world gave Eren clarity of purpose. As a young boy, he came to learn just how far removed he was from freedom. A crucial nuance that many people sadly miss is the fact that Eren doesn't really care about actually seeing those sights. Where Armin desires freedom to see those things as he derives pleasure from experiencing and seeing the unknown, Eren's idea of freedom and seeing those sights is purely concerned with having the ability to do so. This is exemplified in chapter 14, where we receive one of the most important sequences in all of Attack on Titan. Eren has been tasked with plugging the hole in Wall Rose when he enters an unconscious state of disorientation and delirium. Armin is doing everything he can to wake him up. The situation is incredibly dire and all of their lives are at risk. In the real world, Armin is banging on Eren's titan nape, and in the dream state, they are young children again and Armin is banging on his window. He tries everything to wake him up, telling him he'll die, asking him what happened to your sworn vengeance upon the Titans, the ones that killed your mother. And finally, he reminds him about their conversation and the book. The outside world, the burning water, the land of ice, the plains of sand. His own mother's death wasn't enough to bring him back to reality, but this was more than enough. Eren immediately gets up when he remembers the outside world, and Armin asks him arguably the most important question Eren has ever been asked. You always knew hell was waiting for you one step outside the wall, so why did you ever want to go to the outside world? To which Eren responds, well, that's obvious, isn't it? It's because I was born into this world. In a matter of life and death, this realization is what makes Eren keep moving forward. It's what drives him to take control over his Titan form, plug the hole in Wall Rose, and continue marching through hell. The most important thing to take away from this sequence is that Eren himself doesn't truly understand what drives him. This realization is something deeply embedded within him. It's his nature, something completely instinctual, like how a baby is born with certain reflexes. Some things are both inexplicable yet obvious. You don't know why you do certain things, you just do them. You don't know why you feel a certain way, you just feel. It's why Eren is displayed as a child here, to echo the fact that his motivation is something he doesn't fully understand but knows is there. Furthermore, when Armin describes the several sights they've discussed and yearn to see one day, Eren visualizes an open expanse of sea and sky. No burning water, no land of ice, no plains of sand, just a blank plain of the sea and the sky. A visual not so different to the one we see in the final chapter of the manga. This is so crucial to consider when trying to understand Eren Yeager's character and psyche. He isn't really concerned with those sights for what they are. The idea of burning water or a country made up of ice isn't what drives and entices him. It's simply the idea that those things exist and he lacks the freedom to enjoy them. After all, he was born into this world. Surely he has a right to experience it without constraint. Following this realization, Eren has a monologue which might be equally as significant as the aforementioned dream sequence. When we're born, all of us are free. That's what Eren means by because I was born into this world. He deserves to see those sights because he considers freedom to be a birthright. And then it gets really crazy, especially with later context, when Eren thinks to himself that the people who reject that birthright of freedom do not matter, that they have no worth in a sense, which is a very scary thing when you pair it with his belief that we should all fight for our right to freedom. It doesn't matter how terrifying the world is, it doesn't matter how cruel the world is, fight, fight, fight. Fight through the Titans, the humans who are arguably worse than the Titans, fight through all the obstacles and adversities on the path to taking back the freedom we are born with and rightfully deserve. That is Eren Yeager in a nutshell from a fundamental standpoint, and it raises some very alarming questions. What about the people who don't fight for freedom? What about the people who don't clench tightly to this birthright as Eren perceives it? Does inaction make you an enemy in Eren's eyes? Just some food for thoughts. I don't think there's a clear answer to these questions, but they are very interesting to ponder. Everything I've already explained is further reiterated in chapter 73, where Eren speaks to Armin about their shared dream and the clear differences between their motivations towards the same goal. And here is where Eren states that when thinking about getting his freedom back, he can feel strength welling up inside of him. That's what he lives for, what drives him, to fight and reclaim the freedom that was stripped of him. And that sounds like something more than understandable, right? You can sympathize with that sort of motivation, you can respect that sort of motivation, but in reality, the implications of this mentality are terrifying. The way Eren's mindset functions is actually quite simple, despite how complex the writing of his character may be. If you are in any way opposed to the freedom he wishes to reclaim, you are an enemy, and you don't matter. You even deserve to die, since he visualizes murdering Mikasa's kidnappers when he states that these people don't matter. And that brings us on to the culmination of Eren's character, the moment he thinks he has taken back his freedom, the rumbling. There are so many subtle little details in the rumbling chapters that are unfortunately widely disregarded, despite how crucial they are to understanding the overall picture. I don't think there's anybody with a shred of sanity who would disagree that this genocide wherein Eren wipes out 80% of humanity is wrong and cruel, irredeemably so. Eren acknowledges this himself in the final chapter, but something being cruel, wrong, evil, whatever word you want to attach to the act, doesn't make it one-dimensional. Eren didn't just want to kill everybody. He didn't think everybody in the outside world deserved to die, and he didn't become a monster completely consumed by his pursuit of freedom. There are multiple variables at play here. So many I won't be able to cover all of them in this video, but I'll try my best to go over the most crucial ones. Eren performs the rumbling for 4 main reasons. The first is his love for his friends, coupled with a desire to give them the opportunity to live long lives. The second is to end the Titan curse. The third is to give Paradis a fighting chance against the rest of the world, since a retaliation from the rumbling survivors is practically inevitable at some point. And the fourth, and most important in the context of this video, is Eren's desire to reclaim his freedom. It's important to understand that just because Eren thinks the rumbling will give him the freedom he has long sought after, and professes that he is free in chapter 131, doesn't mean the rumbling has actually provided him with that freedom. There are so many things that substantiate the fact that Eren is not truly free when he performs the rumbling. He takes the form of himself as a child in the iconic freedom spread, a child being symbolic of ignorance, something he himself previously stated as the thing furthest removed from freedom. We see his real head at the end of 131, eyes closed to the horrors he's inflicting, further emphasizing his ignorance. It's made to look as if he's flying, birds and flight being a universal symbol of freedom, but in truth he's actually trapped between the Titan smoke he's on top of and the clouds that are on top of him. The massive walls he has always equated to being a barrier that strip him of his freedom are here with him, this time in the form of the colossal titans surrounding him. The founding titan itself looks like a massive ribcage, trapping Eren within. All of these subtle details coalesce to prove that Eren in this moment is the furthest thing from free. At his core, Eren is a slave to none other than himself, his preconceived notions, his concept of freedom, his innate primal desires, and his ability to see memories of both the past and the future. Eren in the post-time skip obviously isn't stupid. He fully comprehends the cycle of hatred, the fact that there is suffering and oppression both within and outside of the walls. He knows that there are good people outside of the walls like Falco. He tells Reiner that they're all the same at the end of the day, driven by their instincts. But he still needs to keep moving forward. He still needs to view them as enemies, because at the end of the day, Eren Yeager is driven by his instincts. That's why he must revert to a child when performing the rumbling. That's why he repeats the same words he stated at the very beginning of the story in chapter 130 to mark the beginning of the rumbling. His mindset must revert to that of a child's, seeing things very simplistically in black and white, because as the adult he is now, he understands the complexities, the greys. He simply cannot go through with the rumbling without wearing the mask of an ignorant child. That's why Ramsay is so important to Eren and just the story of Attack on Titan as a whole. He is a reflection of who Eren once was, an innocent child who had everything taken from him, who had his birthright of freedom stripped from him. And that's what hurts Eren so much, why he has his emotional breakdown in chapter 131. He goes from being the victim to the perpetrator, the one who strips Ramsay's freedom from him. Eren is fully cognizant of the horrors he is committing. He knows it's wrong, he hates what he's doing, but he's shackled to this childish, selfish dream. And that's why his emotional confession to Ramsay is so powerful and hypocritical. He knows that Ramsay doesn't speak the same language as them and couldn't possibly understand what Eren is saying. It's one of his most selfish acts in the series. He's simply offloading guilt, but he doesn't want to truly be understood or stopped by anybody. He still wants to carry out the rumbling. And at the end of it all, Eren admits that he doesn't know why he's always sought freedom. He's never had a proper answer for why he does what he does. That's why he has lines like, "I just can't accept an end like that," or "because I was born into this world," or "I am just me." Eren is simply Eren, and he can never escape from that. At least, not by himself. Give up your dream and die. This line is one of the last things that Levi says to Erwin before his suicide charge against the Beast Titan. The way this page is composed is very similar to Eren's death in chapter 138 at the hands of Mikasa. Despite the Ackerman curse being disproved by Zeke in chapter 130, it is very fitting that both Levi and Mikasa break free from a metaphorical curse in these moments that ultimately lead to their host's demise. It may not have been a biological predisposition, but there is a curse that deeply affects both Levi and Mikasa when it comes to Erwin and Eren, respectively. They both love them, even if it wasn't necessarily in a romantic sense in Levi's case. Mikasa killing Eren is freeing him from the shackles of his dream the same way Levi did for Erwin. She takes it upon herself to deliver the killing blow and make him give up his dream and die. One of the things I love most about Attack on Titan is that, much like it is within the story itself, perspective is absolutely crucial for your understanding. There will always be disagreements and varying interpretations. This video is simply my own interpretation. It isn't necessarily the correct one, and I'd never flaunt it as such. In fact, I'd go as far as to say there is no correct interpretation, but there are definitely incorrect ones. Stories like this hinge upon you as the reader, your own morals and values, your own philosophies, and ultimately your perspective. What you take away from Attack on Titan is what you choose to take away from it, whether that be a conscious decision or otherwise. And I love that so much about it because it forces you to think. It confronts you with painful but possibly necessary questions about who you are and who you choose to be, what you believe in, or if you believe in anything at all. My final point with this video is something that many people might consider as plain common sense, but I do feel is very necessary to quickly brush over. I believe that through Attack on Titan and the character of Eren Yeager, Isayama is trying to communicate the idea that absolute freedom is unattainable. It's a childish dream. There's no such thing as absolute freedom because there will always be obstacles, whether it be natural phenomena in the scope of our universe or the actions of other people we live amongst in our societies. There will always be things we simply cannot do, regardless of our desires. At the end of the day, we are men and not piano keys. We are moral agents with our own free will, but the world is comprised of things completely out of our control. External factors that have nothing to do with us and our actions, but still affect us very deeply. But we need to fight the urge to do irrational things just to prove that fact. We need to stay level-headed and embrace the possibility of external factors and be prepared for whatever life throws at us. This idea isn't anything special or revolutionary, but it's the extreme lengths that Isayama goes to deliver this idea that makes it so powerful, giving Eren the power of the founder, the past, present, and future all existing at once in his mind, knowing exactly what is going to happen and how it's going to happen, but still giving him the power of choice. Eren is the perfect blend of free will and determinism, a character who thinks everything is set in stone, but still has the ability to exert his own free will. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's easily one of the toughest I've ever had to write a script for, and I still only brushed the surface. There's so many more things that can be said about the rumbling and Eren's character, and I hope to try tackle them in future videos. With that being said though guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I hope you have a fantastic day.